And we are here on the Sports Talk Nation here on YouTube. Welcome aboard, folks. Michael Cohen here with you, host of the Open Mic program. A lot to digest today in the National Football League. A lot of things we're going to talk about. One, David Gettleman being introduced by the Giants as the new general manager. Todd Bowles, believe it or not, getting a contract extension with the Jets. And then, of course, the final week of the regular season as we get ready for the postseason. Now, a couple of things. We will have a special guest joining us in a couple of minutes to talk about the Todd Bowles re-signing with the Jets. But before we do that, let's just talk about the David Gettleman hiring for the Giants. Now, the Giants bring in Gettleman, who is no stranger at all to the Giants. He has been with the Giants for over about 15 years, from 1998 to 2012. He had seen their Super Bowl runs, obviously, in 2000 when they lost to the Ravens, and then more successfully in 2007 and 2011 when they beat the Patriots. So he has been with the team for a very long time. He's very, very familiar with guys like Eli Manning, who, of course, is the center of attention right now with regards to his future. And a couple of takeaways from just listening to the press conference with Gettleman just a little while ago. One, this is a very personable guy. Two, this is a guy who is a no-nonsense guy, and he just fits the persona of the Giants. You think about the Giants, think about where they've been over the years with guys like Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin, a bunch of guys who are no-nonsense guys who want to get the job done and just want to win. And that's kind of the sense you get here from David Gettleman as the general manager of the team. He's not robotic at all, something that we had gotten used to with Jerry Reese over the years, last 10 years, and even with Mike McCagnon in New York as well with the Jets. A guy who's just robotic, says the typical coach speak, if you will, or GM speak, and just kind of dances around questions. While Gettleman didn't exactly answer questions directly, he was pretty open and honest for the most part, and was pretty personable. That's the sense I got from him just listening to the press conference. In addressing Eli Manning, he was pretty open to the idea that Manning is going to be his quarterback moving forward. Went out of the way to say if the performance that he had last week against the Eagles is not, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, against the Eagles was not a mirage, then he will move forward. He's comfortable with moving forward with Eli Manning. When asked about the draft pick that the Giants are possibly going to have, which will be either a number 2 or number 3 pick, Gettleman really didn't want to address it, but he did say you can never have enough good players at one position. And he referenced when the Giants brought in guys like Osei Umenyiora and Matthias Kiwanuka, and also Jason Pierre-Paul, and all the players they have brought in over the years as defensive linemen. And he says, at the time, a lot of people looked at him and looked at the Giants' scouting department and front office as a group with 12 heads, because why are you bringing in all these defensive linemen? Well, it all helped because the team went on to win a Super Bowl. So I guess in a way it's him answering and not answering the question of what the Giants are going to do with that draft pick as far as the possibility of them going out there and getting a quarterback, potentially a Sam Darnold, a Josh Rosen. Those are the top 2 quarterbacks out there in this draft. Or will the Giants go elsewhere? Look elsewhere. I think they probably should. Maybe address positions like offensive line, which has been a big problem for that football team, and maybe even running back. We'll see what they do. Of course, there is a guy like Saquon Barkley who is out there with Penn State, who was one of the top running backs in college football. Wouldn't be a bad pick for the Giants if they should choose to go that route as well. But basically, you get the point is, Gettleman coming in here wants to win, even went out of his way to say that he wants to kick ass, for that matter, and wants players who hate losing. And that's something that's going to be a big part of what this team needs to do. They need to change the culture there with the Giants. For the last couple of years here with Ben McAdoo and with Jerry Reese, there really hasn't been an emphasis necessarily on taking no prisoners and winning. Yes, the team won last year. They won 11 games, got to the playoffs, but there were a lot of things that went on that were distractions. You saw the off-field issues, particularly at the end of the year last year, where we saw Odell Beckham Jr. and a bunch of wide receiver teammates go down to Miami before the playoffs started. That was a big red flag. And then coming into this year, with all the locker room drama that went on, players getting suspended because of their disagreements with McAdoo. You have the situation here at the end of the year with Eli Apple getting into arguments with teammates, Landon Collins throwing him under the bus. Those kind of things are not going to be allowed anymore under David Gettleman, and he is going to try to be the guy. And that's one thing I talked about with Doug Rush last week on my program. You want someone to come in and be the man, and where the buck stops with him. And that's kind of the sense you get here with Gettleman. Now, the question is going to be, and the biggest question of all, aside from the quarterback and aside from Eli Manning's future, is where did the Giants go for a head coach? A lot of people suspect that the Giants will be looking at a guy like Steve Wilks, who's the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. Now, he is a potential candidate. A lot of people have been linking him to this job because of his familiarity with Gettleman during their time together with the Panthers. Of course, Gettleman was the Panthers GM from 2013 till this summer when he was let go because of contract disputes with veteran players. So there's a possibility there. Maybe Mike Shula, who was the offensive coordinator with the Panthers as well, another guy who was down there during Gettleman's time with the Panthers. He's a possibility if the Giants want to go the offensive route. And then there's the outside-the-box candidates, guys like Josh McDaniels. Now, from listening to a guy like Gettleman today, I don't think of Josh McDaniels, who is I guess in the more polite way to say, is a firebrand coach, a guy who rubbed everybody the wrong way in Denver. I don't see him coming in here, in spite of his success in New England as an offensive play caller, and being a Gettleman type of guy and being the head coach. I just don't see that. So I would probably push him to the side as a potential candidate. Maybe a Bill O'Brien, who right now is still the head coach of the Houston Texans, but there's been a lot of rumors and speculation out there that he could be on the outs in Houston, and maybe he will fit in potentially as a Giants head coach. There's a possibility there. So those are just some of the names out there. You want to throw in Matt Patricia, who's the Patriots defensive coordinator. Again, like McDaniels, do you really want to give the job to another Patriots underling of Bill Belichick? Because we've seen over the years where a lot of these coordinators and assistants with Patriots do not become great NFL head coaches. And that's been a big problem over the years for a lot of those potential candidates. So that is the biggest question now. We know a little bit more about David Gettleman. We see what kind of person he is. He's a very personable guy. Now the question is, he kind of fits the Giant brand. Now the question is, who will be his type of head coach moving forward? Will he be looking for the disciplinary guy, the classic Giants coach built out of the Parcells, Coughlin type of coach, or does he go outside the box and bring in somebody that he is maybe more familiar with like a Stephen Wilks from Carolina, or goes maybe a little rogue and brings in somebody that we're not talking about right now, we're not thinking about right now. So the Giants have their general manager in place, and now you would have to hope, if you're the Giant fan, that this team now can begin to move forward and begin to put together a team that is going to put this 2017 season in the rearview mirror. Because when you look at the Giants football team, look at the Giants history, it's very rare that they have these kind of years, and this might be the worst season in Giants history. And we'll see if there's really nowhere to go other than up for this Giant team moving forward. A lot of talk earlier in this press conference as well about Odell Beckham Jr., a guy who wants to get paid a lot of money, and is also a guy who is a controversial player, both off the field and in the locker room. Does Gettleman, do the Giants commit to him, to Beckham, long term? That's going to be an interesting question. Keep in mind, Gettleman's the same guy who kicked Josh Norman out of Carolina. And if you remember, Josh Norman is the same guy who got into a fight with Odell Beckham Jr. a couple of years ago when the Giants and Panthers met in a game. I think it was in 2014 when they had that fight. So we'll see what happens moving forward with the Giants. Now, as for the Jets, the Jets. It's kind of funny that on the same day that the New York Giants go out there and they have their press conference for their new general manager, they're trying to turn the page to the future and trying to change the culture, the Jets throw out a missive. It's kind of like this kind of thing that the Yankees would do in their glory days with George Steinbrenner. Just make sure they're in the news, because you can't have a moment where they're not in the news. They sent out the press release that they have extended both Todd Bowles and Mike McCaggan 2 more years through 2020. A decision, and again, we'll have our special guest, Mr. Feuerstein, in just a moment to talk about it and get his take, but a decision that, in my mind, was a pretty bad decision. Because, to me, Bowles has been a coach who has been inconsistent. The team has been inconsistent under his watch. Yes, they may have overachieved this year in some respects. A lot of people thought this team was going to be a team that was going to win 0-2 games this year. They ended up winning 5. But what does that mean? That tells me that the Jets are kind of embracing mediocrity in some way, because what has Bowles done has been so great? What has he done that's been so good as a head coach? Yes, the team has played a little bit harder for him at times in games, but they're still not winning games. They're blowing games late. He has had bad performances as a head coach as far as in-game strategy, and has done a poor job in adjusting his game plan in situations that would merit a change in philosophy and change in strategy. He's done a poor job in that regard. Timeouts, penalties. The Jets are one of the league leaders in penalties this year. The quarterback situation in total disarray as the Jets move forward into 2018. And now the Jets are saying they're going to entrust both Mike Maccagnan and Todd Bowles, the same two guys who brought their Jet fans, Christian Hackenberg, a total failure, Bryce Petty, a total failure, and two guys over the age of 35, in Josh McCown and Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're going to entrust those two men to go out there and make a decision for the Jets quarterback position moving forward, in between maybe a Kirk Cousins, maybe a Case Keenum, who's going to be a free agent this year, a Teddy Bridgewater, who's a free agent this year, and maybe even going into the draft, guys like a Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, some of the guys that could drop to the Jets in the draft, maybe even a Lamar Jackson, although he's not a very good quarterback in Louisville. He's terrible, in fact. You get the point. We'll see what the Jets decide to do as far as their future is concerned in that position. And the Jets are telling the fans, they trust Bowles and Maccagnan to make that decision, and I don't know if that's the right decision. So, in the interim, let's go to the phone lines right now. Let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend. That is Dan Feuerstein. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Michael. How are you today?
All right. So, let's talk about your shock and awe, for that matter, as the Jets have decided to bring back Todd Bowles and Mike Maccagnan. Now, I thought myself that both of these guys were on, or at least Todd Bowles anyway, was on a hot seat going into this season. Yes, this team overachieved in some respects. The bar was set very, very low for this football team at the start of the year, with people saying they're going to win anywhere between 0 and 2 games. They ended up winning 5, and in the eyes of a lot of people, that was enough. In the eyes of some, like myself, I look at the bad in-game management, the mistakes, the penalties, the inability to develop a quarterback, and a lot of those problems I thought manifested throughout the course of this year. Now, was there some vast inexperience on this team? Yes. But at the same time, I put a lot of blame on the head coach. The inability to get the team ready for games in Tampa Bay and Denver stand out for me as well. I thought at the end of the day, maybe moving on for the Jets would have been the best decision, but they decide to keep Todd Bowles, Mike Maccagnan through at least 2020, and now it gets very, very interesting as to what they're going to do to fix this football team. Dan, I want to hear your thoughts.
I'll be honest with you, Michael. The way that this season went, and once they shedded the roster during the offseason and training camp, including the preseason, I felt that, look, this is a rebuild. This is a rebuild that whether Maccagnan or Bowles wasn't going to say it's a rebuild, it really was a rebuild because you got some players that were being drafted for their first ever NFL season. You got some players that are brought over who have played in the NFL before, but they've never played for the Jets. So a lot of inaccuracies. You felt there was going to be some plays that were not going to work, some plays that might work, and but if you're looking at the overall record of Todd Bowles, even I felt towards the end of this year that he wasn't going to survive that. I thought, okay, it's a rebuild, but you know what? He might not survive the ending of the regular season. I thought he was going to be a goner once they got back from Foxborough. Whether they were going to go 5-11 or 6-10, of course, they haven't played the game yet up in Foxborough. I am in some ways shocked that both Bowles and Maccagnan are still here. In some ways, I'm kind of not, but still, though, I lean towards the side of I thought he was a goner.
Yeah, I thought he was a goner too, and like I mentioned before, there were so many things that just stood out to me. The inability to get the team ready, I thought, for the game in Tampa Bay and in Denver was a big problem. They were having a lot of trouble trying to win games on the road. I think they only had one win on the road in their last, 10 or 11 ball games away from MetLife Stadium, so that was a big problem as well. The locker room drama last year stood out. Now, he changed the coach a little bit. They both did, because they got rid of a lot of the guys that were problems from last year's team. But there were still problems in the locker room with Muhammad Wilkerson. And I thought a lot of that was of Bowles' own doing, because, remember, he came out last year and said that he had no problem with people being late to meetings, and, meetings are meetings, and he really didn't care about it at the time. Now all of a sudden he does, and you have the situation with Wilkerson where he's not going to be on this football team anymore. So there are still a lot of problems, I thought, that existed with him as the head coach of this football team. In-game strategy, that's a problem. His inability to use timeouts in crucial situations. You talk about the punt at the beginning of the year in the game in Buffalo. I know you've talked about that ad nauseum. The inability to use timeouts at the end of the game last week against San Diego, or Los Angeles rather. Not kicking a field goal with a lot of time left in the game last week. Not using timeouts in Denver. There's so many different things that stand out for me as there have been warts with him as a head coach for this football team.
Yeah, that's the one thing as well, Michael, and that is infuriating to me, is because, like you said already about those things, but let me also say this as well. He is not a good coach or a good head coach right now when you need to make adjustments during the game. That is the one issue I also have with Todd Bowles as well. I just don't think he's a good in-game head coach when you're down by at least a couple of scores, or at least a 2-possession game. Even a 1-possession game, he just proved it. Mm-hmm. He needs to fix that for 2018. He has to. He has to understand that you can't keep shoving square peg into a round hole. He has to improve next year. And if he doesn't, if he improves record-wise, and obviously he's going to remain there for the second year. But if he's not going to personally change things up in the middle of a game when you need a head coach to be on his, when he's got his thinking cap on, if he's not going to do that, then by all means, Todd Bowles should be fired, because, in my opinion, I think this is last chance saloon right now. And the only way he's going to survive all this is if not just to have a better record, but improving as a head coach where, like you just said, he's got to use his timeouts better. He's got to use his decision-making for play calling much better in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and let me just throw this in here, too, because moving forward, the quarterback position is going to be the biggest talking point. Now, do I trust Todd Bowles and this coaching staff to develop a young quarterback? From what I've seen with Bryce Pratt and Christian Hackenberg, the answer is right now, no. Now, I understand that both of those quarterbacks may not have the pedigree of some of the guys that are coming out of college this year, but when you consider that this team has done such a bad job in developing young quarterbacks really for a very, very long time, even before Bowles and McCagney ever got here, I don't know if this is the right coaching staff to handle, let's say, a Sam Darnold or a Baker Mayfield or any one of these kids that are going to be coming out of college and the Jets are going to use a first-round pick on in April. I think that's a big gamble right now. And considering their draft history, how do we know they're even going to make that kind of pick and draft a quarterback? Maybe they'll go out there and sign a quarterback like a Kirk Cousins in free agency. I don't think Jet fans want to see, even though he was a good soldier this year, I don't think Jet fans want to see Josh McCown back next year, although I kind of have a gut feeling that's going to happen. But
let me just say this.
But that's going to be the biggest. That's going to be the biggest concern now moving forward. Is this team's ability to either draft or sign a quarterback who can make the difference for this team? Because if they can't, and this team goes 3-13 this year, or next year, I should say, then we're here having this discussion in 12 months again.
Well, let me just say this, Michael. If Josh McCown does come back, if they do bring him back, I should say. Pardon me. If they do bring back Josh McCown, and let's just say they do draft Darnold or the quarterback, like you said, from Oklahoma, from the University of Oklahoma.
Right.
If they do draft one of those two quarterbacks and they do bring back Josh McCown, they need to have a full understanding. And I'm talking about McCagnon as well, because he's got to tell Bowles that at some point in time, if you're going to develop the quarterback, and if you do bring back Josh McCown, you're bringing him back probably to start the season again, but you're also mentoring one of those two quarterbacks if they get drafted by the Jets, or any quarterback who's been impressive this year in college. If they do draft a quarterback in the first round because I think McCown is probably going to become a quarterback's coach somewhere down the line. Mm-hmm. And I think that if the Jets give him this opportunity to say, okay, listen, we're going to sign you to a contract. This will be the last contract we're going to give you because we're going to pull you in the middle of the year and we're going to ask you to stay on the team to become the quarterback's coach.
And he's going to be the head coach. He's going to be the head coach after 9 weeks. No.
Technically. Now, apparently, and this is from a source, and apparently there might be some wheeling and dealing between the two New York football teams.
What do you mean?
We might see the Jets move up to where the Giants are. The Giants might move back down.
I don't see the Giants doing that at all.
For taking 2 second-round picks. Now, I'm just saying it's a source.
Who's the source?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Who's the source?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Who's the source?
I can't divulge.
Tell me your
source. It's not. No, I can't divulge my sources.
Come on, I want to know who Deep Throat is. Come on, tell me.
No. I found this out, and you know what? We'll see what happens. And who knows? Maybe there will be some wheeling and dealing. But if not, then the Giants will keep their position in the draft, and the Jets will remain in number 7 right now because that's where the Jets are right now. The Jets are in the 7th position in the first round for the draft for this coming April. So all I can say is this. If I were the Jets, and once again, I would try to develop a sweet little package, including Muhammad Wilkerson, before March comes, because he'll still be under contract with the Jets before the new calendar year of the NFL begins. And I would definitely try to get Muhammad Wilkerson into the package. Maybe a Darren Lee if you want to throw him in there. Maybe someone else that you might pick up. You will find out what happens. But right now, it's well, that's what I would do. But we'll see what happens when that day happens.
Yeah. Well, first of all, whoever your source is, I don't know who that is. But I don't see the Giants ever trading their first round pick, which is going to be the number 2 pick, to the Jets, risking that the Jets could pick up a franchise quarterback, and they don't. I just don't see that happening at all. But we'll see what happens. But I think that's impossible. Now, the last thing I'll say is this. The last thing I'll say is this on the Tom Bowles matter. I think part of this is the fact that there are really no good head coaching candidates out there. You look around the NFL right now, and as usual, we're looking at 6 or 7 firings in the NFL. And there was a story that was put out, I think it was ESPN, I don't remember who the writer was, but how the NFL has saturated all the coaching talent in the NFL with all these firings every single year, and that the pool of candidates going into this year is really not that good. I mean, talking about guys like Josh McDaniels, no one wants him. Nick Saban is never going to leave Alabama to go to the NFL again. Matt Patricia, again, with these New England Patriot assistants, they never become great head coaches. Steve Wilkes, his name's being linked to the Giants. He's the Panthers' defensive coordinator. There's really no real great candidate out there. So maybe the Jets are saying, well, if there's no one really out there that's going to be a good candidate, we might as well just stick with what we have. In addition, with the rumors that Todd Bowles could go to Arizona for the Cardinals, and you lock him up for a couple of more guaranteed years and some money, you throw that in there too. That helps. Maybe that is going to be a big part of trying to keep Todd Bowles away from the Arizona Cardinals.
I don't trust anybody right now who's going to get fired to run the Jets, because who do you have confidence in that can turn this team around right now?
Me. No.
Of course you, because you think you should run the Jets as an owner and coach and assistant coach, punter, kicker, quarterback, defensive end, lineman.
Uh-huh. Well, you can play safety. How's that sound?
No. There's no way that's going to happen. But anyway, I mean, would you want Marvin Lewis to run the Jets? Because this is his last year with the Bengals. Exactly. His track record in the playoffs has been horrible. I mean, here's the thing, Michael. The only hope you have right now is Todd Bowles trying to find a way to not be so stubborn and to find a way to improve his play calling, his in-game decisions, clock management.
So, folks, that's Dan Feuerstein of the Feuerstein's Fire Program and also the Jets podcast, which you can hear on Blog Talk Radio. Dan, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's Dan Feuerstein. Again, I want to thank him for coming aboard and joining the program here today. Now, I've got a couple of things here I want to pick on with Todd Bowles. if you are a Jet fan and you think that you can trust this guy to be your head coach and develop a quarterback, like I said like I said here before, I don't see it happening. They have shown no evidence, both Bowles, his coaching staff, Mike McCagnon, of drafting and developing a good quarterback. They haven't done it. Now, there is a good crop of quarterbacks potentially coming in here through the draft. Do you trust this group to coach this young quarterback up and be competitive right away? I don't. Let's just say, for the sake of argument here, that the Jets go out there and they draft, I don't know, Baker Mayfield, or somehow they trade up. They get lucky somehow. Maybe they trade up with the Colts or something like that, and they end up getting someone who drops, like a Josh Rosen or something like that. I don't know. Let's just say that happens. And the team goes 3-13. They bring back Josh McCown for whatever reason, God help us. And they go 3-13 this year, and then fire Todd Bowles and Mike McCagnon, bringing in another general manager, another head coach. And now, what do you got with the quarterback? And I know a lot of people are going to reference the Los Angeles Rams with Jared Goff and the fact that they fired Jeff Fisher at the end of last season, and they really struck gold. Let's just be honest. They struck gold this year with Sean McVay. Most of the time, that doesn't happen very often, where you see a team bring in a new head coach, a new front office, and the quarterback all of a sudden flourishes. Most of the time, you see that quarterback under heavy evaluation, and all of a sudden that quarterback is on his way of being out. So what's the deal here with the Jets? Really, think about that. You bring in another head coach, you bring in another coordinator next year. Now, after a year of having this potential franchise quarterback, now having to learn another system. It makes absolutely no sense. That's why, to me, I would have cleaned house, gotten Todd Bowles out of here. You want to keep Mike McCagnon because he's made a couple of okay moves. Okay, fine. But I would have gotten Todd Bowles and his coaching staff out of here if I were Woody Johnson. But, hey, look, mediocrity is bliss in the home of the New York Jets. Now, a couple more things I just want to touch on here on the Open Mic program regarding the NFL. First of all, on catches. Now, catches have become a big part of the decay that is the National Football League this season. Early in the season, of course, it was the anthem protest. The ratings were going down. And now here we are, late December, going into January, into the playoffs. And now all we can talk about now is how the officials don't know what a catch is, especially what a touchdown is. And we have now seen this consecutive weeks here in regards to Patriots games. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there, conspiracy theorists, they want to go out there and say that this is all about trying to help the Patriots and make up for the fact that Brady was suspended last year for the 4 games. I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories, okay? I'm not into that at all. Or sources and all that other stuff. The fact is, the NFL doesn't know what it's doing when it comes to catches. And it's been a year-long problem this year. It really has been. Last week we saw a play where the Buffalo Bills had a touchdown. A clear touchdown. Kelvin Benjamin made the catch, got 1 foot down, dragged the second foot, still in bounds, and appeared to everybody that it was a touchdown. But the referees, taking forever and a day to review the play, and Al Riveron coming up with a decision, the new senior VP of officiating, deciding that it was not a touchdown, when it was pretty obvious that it was a touchdown. Second straight week, the Patriots get bailed out. Now, I know the Patriots blew out the Bills anyway, but had the Bills had the touchdown there, they would have had a 17-13 lead at the half. Instead, they go into the halftime tied at 13. That's a big difference right there. Then the week before that, with the Jesse James touchdown. Now, I understand that the letter of the rule is that you have to have possession going to the ground. I understand all that, and the letter of the rule is correct. You have to have possession of the football going to the ground. And yes, the ball did move a little bit in Jesse James's hands, and maybe he even didn't have it, for that matter, when he hit the ground. I understand that. But there is confusion here. Because when you watch the play with Jesse James, he crosses the plane, clearly has possession of the ball when he's crossing the plane, and doesn't lose possession until he hits the ground. Or at least it doesn't bobble it out of his hands until he loses the ground. How many times have we seen even running backs going into the end zone and just kind of getting the ball over the end zone, maybe it gets knocked out of their hands, the officials call it a touchdown, don't even look at it again. Call it a touchdown. There is confusion right now in the league because nobody knows what a touchdown is anymore. What is it? And as far as I'm concerned, and I've seen even other photos of the opposite angle from the near side, where it appeared that Jesse James may have had his hands under the ball when he hit the end zone. Regardless, it should have been left a touchdown. It should have been. Now, the way that Pittsburgh ended the game a couple weeks ago, yes, that's up for debate. They certainly should not have, at the very least, Ben Roethlisberger anyway, should not have thrown the ball into the middle of the end zone the way he did in the coverage. He probably should have thrown it out of bounds when he didn't have anybody in that panicked moment. I had no problem with them trying to make a play with a couple of seconds left. You want to try to win the game right there. You don't want to give the ball back to Tom Brady. I understand that. But he should have thrown the ball away and settled for the field goal instead. But still, the officiating has been bad. And again, we've seen it time and time again. We saw it in the Jets-Panthers game. Austin Seferian-Jenkins has a clear touchdown. The officials overrule it after reviewing it for several minutes. And they overrule it, calling it an incompletion. We saw Austin Seferian-Jenkins again get screwed on a touchdown against the Patriots in Week 6. And then if you want to go earlier in the year, Sterling Shepard of the Giants has a catch on the corner of the end zone against the Eagles, gets both feet down, clearly has possession of the football, and then doesn't let go of the football until he's losing balance and going out of bounds. And the officials, again, say it's not a touchdown, which is ridiculous. What is a catch? What is a catch anymore in the NFL? And I'm telling you right now, if we go into the playoffs, and this happens in the playoffs, the NFL is never going to hear the end of it. If they think their ratings are bad now, wait until the officials screwed up big time when it matters the most, with everything on the line. And then you're going to really hear complaining. Imagine if that happens in the Super Bowl. Think about that. You get the Patriots and, I don't know, let's say the Vikings, okay? And you got the Patriots get a touchdown, Rob Gronkowski with a touchdown, but then the officials review it and then overturn it because they don't think it's a touchdown. And everyone else thinks it's a touchdown. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a Super Bowl being decided by that? How awful that would be? I don't care who you root for. It shouldn't happen. And the NFL has to go back and review its rules on catches and on touchdowns because this cannot stand anymore. It really can't. The NFL has enough black eyes as it is. This is a huge black eye if it pops up in the playoffs. Now, as far as the playoffs are concerned, as far as getting ready for the last week of the regular season, let's just take a look where we are right now as far as the playoff scenarios are concerned. We know that a lot of teams are locked up, have division titles, but you still got seeding and also wild cards that are trying to be determined right now. Now, in the AFC, Patriots are locked in. Patriots and Steelers are going to be your 1 and 2. No doubt about it. The question is going to be who's going to be the 1, who's going to be the 2. Now, if let's just say New England lost to the Jets this week and Pittsburgh won, then Pittsburgh would have a chance to jump up to the 1 seed. That's not going to happen. Patriots are going to beat the Jets this week. Pittsburgh will take care of Cleveland. And you're going to have Patriots at 13-3 in the 1 seed, Pittsburgh in the 2 seed at 13-3. Jacksonville is pretty much locked into the number 3 seed. In fact, they are locked into the number 3 seed at 10-5. They don't need to win this game this week in Tennessee. Tennessee does. We'll see. I mean, does Jacksonville want to see Tennessee for 2 straight weeks? I don't think they do. I think Jacksonville is going to try to come out there and play this game and at least try to knock Tennessee out, knock a division rival out of the playoffs this week. We'll see what happens there. Kansas City, they are locked into the 4 seed. They are the AFC West champions, even if they lose this game this week to Denver. They don't need the game, and it looks like Alex Smith is going to sit this game out. So don't be shocked if Denver gets the win this week against Kansas City. Kansas City goes in as a 9-7 division champion. The teams to watch this week are Baltimore, Buffalo, Tennessee, and Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Chargers need to win this week against the Raiders and hope that Tennessee loses in order to get in. Baltimore, all they have to do is to win and they're in. If they lose, then it gets a little more complicated for them. But of all 4 teams that have the best chance to get into the playoffs, it is the Baltimore Ravens. All they have to do is beat the Bengals, a bad Bengal team that's given up on the year, given up on its head coach, and they are in the playoffs. Buffalo taking on Miami this week, very tricky spot for them. They need to win, and they need to get some help. Kind of like Los Angeles in a lot of ways. They need to win and hope that both Los Angeles and Tennessee lose in order to get into the playoffs. Now, they'll be in Miami this week. I think Miami's going to come out there and play this week. So this is a tough spot for the Buffalo Bills in division on the road in Miami. So the very fascinating game at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time. As I said before, Tennessee and Jacksonville. Tennessee needs to win and they are in. They have the better record of Buffalo and Los Angeles as far as conference record is concerned. If they win, they are in as the 6th seed. Now, Jacksonville, as I said, isn't playing for anything this week, but will not be surprised if the Jaguars, going into this, knowing that they can knock Tennessee out and won't have to see them for a second straight week, go out there and try to put an effort in and get a win to close out the regular season. We'll see what happens there. And with the Chargers, as I said, they need to win, get some help. They need to beat the Raiders this week, and they need to hope that Tennessee and Buffalo both lose. Or even if Buffalo wins, it won't matter because then they still have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Buffalo for that matter. They just need Tennessee to lose in order to have a chance to get into the playoffs for the Chargers. So that's what's coming up this week. And the AFC, NFC, Philadelphia is locked into the number 1 seed. They are 13-2. They don't need to win this week against Dallas. Dallas is out of it. So even if Philadelphia loses, ends up 13-3. And if Minnesota wins this week in their finale against Chicago, it ends up 13-3. It doesn't do anything. Philadelphia is still the 1, and Minnesota is the 2. Now, as far as the 3 and the 4 seed is concerned, that could flip around just a little bit. Now, it all depends upon who ends up winning the South. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Carolina and New Orleans both lose this week. Okay, both end up 11-5. And that would give the Los Angeles Rams an opportunity to move up to the 3 seed if they should win against San Francisco. Now, there's been talk, and Sean McVay was out there saying they're going to kind of take the foot off the pedal just a little bit this week, rest some guys against San Francisco, so wouldn't be shocked if the Rams lose the game. He's not too concerned about 3 or 4 seed right now. He just wants to get into the playoffs healthy. But right now, as it stands, New Orleans is the 3 seed, and Los Angeles, the Rams, are the 4 seed. Now, everything is all about the South, because the 3 seed, the 5 seed, and the 6 seed, I know it sounds confusing right now, is all up for grabs, okay? New Orleans is playing in Tampa Bay. Carolina is playing in Atlanta. Atlanta needs to win in order to lock up the 6 seed. If they should lose, it gives the Seattle Seahawks an opportunity to climb up and get the 6th seed from them. So all Atlanta needs to do is beat Carolina, and they are in the playoffs. That's it. Carolina needs to win over Atlanta and hope that New Orleans loses in order to win the AFC, in order to win the NFC South. That's what has to happen for Carolina in order to move up in the playoff picture. New Orleans, all they have to do is win, or if they should lose this week, they need Carolina to lose in order to win the NFC South. So, a little convoluted, but that's what's at stake this week going into the playoffs. As it stands right now, I do think New Orleans is going to take care of business against Tampa Bay. I think Atlanta will beat Carolina, so as far as seeding is concerned, it won't matter there. Carolina will be locked into the 5 seed, and Atlanta will be locked into the 6 seed. So you're looking right now, as you look at this NFC playoff picture, Philadelphia as your 1, Minnesota as your 2, New Orleans as your 3, the Rams are your 4 seed, the 5 seed is Carolina, and the 6 seed would be Atlanta. That would mean you would have Atlanta at New Orleans in the wild card game, and you would have the Rams at the Panthers, or the Panthers at the Rams, I should say, in the wild card game on the NFC side. AFC, I think you're going to see some changes here. I think Tennessee is going to choke. I really do. I think the Chargers are going to get into the playoffs. That's just me. I think the Chargers are going to beat the Raiders. I think the Titans are going to lose to the Jaguars. I think Buffalo is going to end up losing to Miami. Baltimore will beat Cincinnati, and they will get in as a 5 seed. So you're going to have New England as your 1, Pittsburgh as your 2, Jacksonville as your 3, Kansas City as your 4, Baltimore, the Ravens as your 5, and the Los Angeles Chargers as your 6th seed. So that would mean your wild card matchup would be the Los Angeles Chargers would be into Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, and the Kansas City Chiefs will host the Baltimore Ravens in your wild card round. So those are my picks for moving forward, if you will, going into the playoffs here in the 2017 season. Folks, it's been a pleasure. I want to also thank Dan Feuerstein for coming on kind of last second and providing some assistance with us today. Talk a little bit about the Todd Bowles mess. A lot going on in the NFL. Remember to follow us on the social media at OpenMicNJ on Twitter, Facebook.com/OpenMicProgram, and of course, like and subscribe right here on the Sports Talk Nation, right here on YouTube. Take care, everybody. It's been a pleasure. Happy New Year to everybody. We'll see you again in 2018.